In other words, lepoil, this is not the way it is. But there's a mashmas that it could be this way. Lepoil, tzimtzum rishon is siluk, because it's the only way kalim could form. But mitzad the oir, according to the sheet of esesfiris and oir, it could be miut. And we have a pilput that's going to want it for a long time. It's not just one beidik. It's a big arichas that's mashmos doishim, that's analyzing the mashmos, that it's possible to say that the kavs, the tzimtzum rishon, the gabi kav, is only miut that's not siluk legamri, as we discussed earlier. Right? Now, chavre, what's the real chap? What's the real chap? The real chap is that Eidin Seif naturally cannot go into Kalim. Even if Eidin Seif is Begilui, naturally Eidin Seif cannot go into Kalim. Or to use the fancy expression, Eidin Seif's natural state is Igulim. Igulim is like Seif of Kalaman. Eidin Seif and Kalim cannot meet. Meaning, if Eid meets Kali, either the Kali doesn't know the Eid is there, or because of the Eid, the Kali is bottled by Metzias Lagamre. There's no Kabbalah. A Kali is Makabbalah, right? Like a Talmud is Makabbalah from a Rav. Eidin Seif cannot be niskabel through into a keli. So how does kav happen? How does kav happen? Huh? So I keep on telling it to you, and you're going to see it, if not today, tomorrow, when the shurim, whatever it's. I don't know what you're going to see, but it's going to be part of the conversation. I showed it to him through Bekiyah. Through Bekiyah, right? Through Bekiyah. That the Eidin Seif has to break through Choshech HaTzimtzum. The Lashon and the Maimed is, I'm going to give this pages to you. This is from the Rebbe's HaMaimed. When I finish this page, I'm going to be giving you the Rebbe's HaMaimed. Davar negdi al ha'oir. That because the kav has to face davar negdi al ha'oir, has to break through Choshech HaTzimtzum, so it comes b'shinei hamos. So understand, chevre, listen carefully. What is the reason that tzimtzum arishon, the gabe kav, according to the sheet of esesfiris pshutim, is not no esesfiris in it. Kaidem durush, that before this maimer, because if you have no siluk legamri in kav, the kav after the tzimtzum is safe of kalalman. And Seif HaKlamen, it's not the pshat that breaks the kli, it never meets a keli. How does oir change to be able to be gilui and go into a keli, and the keli should be able to receive it because of tzimtzum arish, bekiyah. Or the yibokak hashachar erecha has to break the choshech tzimtzum. If you don't believe me, ask Vorkov. I hold him the ma'amerech, we listen in the venik, Perek Reisha and Gimel, in the Hemshchayim Beis, the third chayil, where that's written very, very very clearly, right? It says, now, I'm asking you a question, and please, I need one of you to know the answer. Otherwise, I'm going to feel like a failure. So if you want me to feel like a failure, then don't know. If you try to make me feel good, look covered. Shleishim Yom Kein Chag HaPesach, whenever it goes out of Mitzrayim, Mr. Wissen. What about according to this Maimed? What about according to this Maimed? Okay, even according to the Tzimtzum, what?
There's
Think.
kav even before that.
There's kav even before the tzimtzum. What does kav mean?
10 swears.
No. That there's an oil that's going to go into keli, and the keli is going to be makabelit. That's the word, right? When in doubt, you watch the classes online, yeah. When in doubt, finish the sentence. Say kavana. What's the pshat of that word? What is the pshat of that word? That because the Eibish's kavan is pnimius, that's Ayin Beis. Yasha yechelu fanei oir coming into keli. So there's such a thing called pnimi and beyetzem. Till the madrega of Eidin Seif and the madrega of etzem, there's an inyan of oir that it's inyan. It's not just Esses Svidus versus Svidus in case. It's Gilui versus Helim. It's Makiv Yoshev versus Pnimius versus Makiv, Yoshev versus Eagle. So that's the big difference. The big difference is not where the Svidus come from. The difference is where the Gilui comes from. According to the Shita, there's no Esses Svidus and Eid, and in Seif Shofnei HaTzimtzum cannot go into a Keli. It's no Gilui. It's like Seif of Kalalman. The Bekiyah of the Tzimtzum Rishon, because it's what's the Lashon Nivei, Daven, Negdi, Allah Eid, it creates the Kav as a Matthias goes into Keli. But according to the Shita of Esses Svidus and Eid, the big Chiddush is not Esses Svidus and Eid. The big Chiddush is Pnimius. The big Chiddush is Gilui. Lifnei HaTimtum is an 8 safe which the Eibishter decided is going to go into a Keli. And a Keli in other languages is called a Zulas. And the Kel is going to receive the Oyer, not because of Tzimtzum Rishon, but because of the Eibishter's Kavod. It's a huge nafkamina between the two sheets. Huge nafkamina. It's much bigger than Esesfiris and Eir. Much bigger than Esesfiris and Eir. I should say the correct word is much deeper than the Inyan of Esesfiris and Eir. Because this idea that Eir goes into the Kli, because this is the Kavana, goes to the very essence of the creation. Kavana Sabriya. You follow? Now, accordingly, we had a Moedik Chiddush in the last year, which was on Wednesday. And the Chiddush was that the Mashal for Tzimtzum Rishon of Rav Talmud is very different in the Shita, which is before the Hemshech Hayim Beis, and Lefi Drush, according to the Shita of Hayim Beis. Why? Because what is the Mashal of Rav Talmud of Tzimtzum Rishon? Remember? The Mashal of Rav Talmud of Tzimtzum Rishon is, the Mashal of Rav Talmud of Tzimtzum Rishon is, hello, do I have your attention, please? The Mashal of Rav Talmud of Rishon is that when the Rav is in his own world, he has no idea how the Talmud thinks. He has no idea how the Talmud thinks. And he doesn't find out how the Talmud thinks till he turns off his brain. Then he's able to see Madrega Seichel Talmud, and then he can be a Mashpia. Now that Shita is saying what? That until Tzimtzum Rishon, there is no possibility for Erakav. Before the Tzimtzum, the Eibishter, in quotes, doesn't know how Kalim and Makabal. Tzimtzum Rishon takes away the Eid safe, so he notices the Kalim, and the Eid is able to appreciate how the Kalim are going to receive Eid. It's not in the Madrega of Re'iyah, it's the Madrega of Shmir that we talked last week. So the marshal of Tzimtzum Rishon is that when the Rav turns off his brain, he notices the Talmud. When he notices the Talmud, there's Madrega Seichel Talmud, and he can mashpia to the Talmud. Are we good? Are we good? What about Lefi Drush there? Madrega's a Talmud goes till Atzmus. Madrega's a Talmud goes till Atzmus. The Rav doesn't know Madrega's a Talmud. It's the only reason he exists. Now this doesn't say in the Maimer. It doesn't. I talked it out. But if you think that you have a different pshat, please go ahead and tell me I'm wrong. The Rebbe Rashab is saying, like I keep on telling you, when you change the Shittas, there's a basic change between the Shitta before the Ayin Beis, and then a whole bunch of little things change along with it, like Esesfiris Eknuzas, Esesfiris Enatik, and the two Madregas of Idle and of Idle Tata, all the things talked about in the previous Maimed. And in this Maimed, it's the question of Siluk or Miat Lagabayera Kaf. But the Rebbe said in the Shir of Wednesday that Lefi Drush Zeh, according to this Maimed, the Moshe of Rav Talmud is not that the Rav doesn't know Madrega Seichel Talmud till he turns off his brain. The Rav has been thinking about the Talmud from the moment the Rav came into existence. You're listening. So Viv Techois coming to use a Rav Nissanism. Kum Techoisit, Kum Techoisit, Kum Techoisit. What's the Kum Techoisit? You have to give a Moshe for this. You have a Moshe for this. Yeah? What's a Moshe for this? What's the difference between a Rebbe and a Guterid? A Rebbe and a Rebbe mit a Lamed, the Rebbe once said in the Fabrengen. I heard it myself from the Rebbe. A Rebbe mit a Lamed. What's between a Rebbe mit a Lamed? Reb Shmuel Wittmann was a big Pikeach. Shmuel used to say, as a Guterid, vos wird sein, zogt. A Rebbe, vos zogt wird sein. You understand the difference? A Polish Rebbe tells you what's going to happen. A Rebbe, whatever he tells you, that's what happens. This has been a kutz ala kutz. But what's the difference between a Rebbe and a Guterid? And I mentioned this to you in the class last week. That because of the Ma'aseh Mishpat HaSforim, the Rebbe had to write down Kvayochel, his job description. Are you aware of this?
Yeah.
The Rebbe had to write down his Mishra, his job. And Chatchilit came out right after Gimel Tammuz. Right after Gimel Tammuz, they gave out 3 krochim. I forgot what they were called, blue books. And they had over there Moedik minus, that minus from Rabbi Krinsky and Van Zion Shem, very powerful stuff. And it was printed in that quantity, which came out Nun Hey, Tafshin Nun Hey, 30 years ago. It's been printed over and over again. But the Rebbe had to write down his job. You know what he wrote down? The first thing is that he has to be Mu'oided everybody else to serve the Eibishter to the maximum ability possible by being a Dugma Chaya, by being a Dugma Chaya and teaching them how they should live. And then it says, "Ve'achar kach bo avedosei betur prat." Then comes on personal avoid. So what's the difference between a Rebbe and a Rebbe mitalamed? A Rebbe is a neshama close. First of all, his job is he must be to somebody else. Second of all, job is if he has time left over and koiches left over and chveis vos, then he has to do avoid the pratis. But Rebbe mitalamed, first of all, does avoid the pratis. He says, "I've been nothing like you and me." And second of all, the union of afla lecha kamoicha is makar of somebody else. So what's the difference between these two personalities? The etzem of a Rebbe is hashpah on other people. The etzem of a Gutarid is hashpah on himself, is hashpah on other people, comes later. So now you have two Mishalom of Rav and Talmud. You have a Moshel of a Rav and Talmud, and until the Rav turns off his seichel, he doesn't know about the Talmud. And you have a Moshel of Rav and Talmud, that before the Rav thinks about himself, he's already a Rav, because that's his inyan be'etzem. You hear what I'm saying? I'm making this all up. I'm making all of this up. I'm inventing it. You understand? But the Rebbe is, so in other words, that's a mashal which would be Masam Teb Shechayim Beis. Teb Shechayim Beis says, Lefi Drush Zeh, the Rav knows about Seichel HaTalmud, you could even say before you know Seichel Atzmei, because that's his Inyan. So the Inyan of Tzimtzum Arishin, in the mashal of a Rav, of Rav and Talmud, is not that until the Rav turns off his brain, he doesn't know Seichel Madrega Seichel HaTalmud. He knows Madrega Seichel HaTalmud be'etzem, because that's his Inyan. You're listening? I need your attention. Undivided. Bli plucked, not split. Okay, now. So the last shir talked about the mashal of Tzimtzum Arishin, and it spoke about the mashal of Rav and Talmud. And it really did not explain our shita. It explained the classic shita, right? The Maimed inside explained why you have to have siluk lagamri. It's not enough meal, correct? And he used the mashal of Rav Talmud. I spoke into the shir that lefi drush zayid you have to say a different mashal of Rav Talmud. Okay. Now I'm giving you a third shir in this Maimed, and the third shir, this Maimed, is also not lefi drush zayid. It's also speaking the classic shita. Before the Ayin Beis. Before the Ayin Beis, right? What are the 5 things I told you? Tzimtzum, number 1, it creates Mokah. Number 2, it affects Noga by a Tzimtzum. Noga should be touched by a Tzimtzum and they're the same as Kolam. Number 3, it creates the Kaf. Number 4, it creates Kelim. And number 5, it makes that the Kelim should be before the Tator Gogan. So when the air comes into the Keli is stronger than the air, right? As we discussed last week.
Number 6.
Number 6, the Keli is separate. But these last 3 points are really 1 point. He's right. So according to the Maimor before the Hemshchaim Beis, Tzimtzum Arishin not only creates Kelim, which is numbers 4, 5, and 6. Tzimtzum Arishin creates Kav. Why? Because lifnei atzimtzum, there's no oil that's going to go into a kale. There's no air pnimi. The tzimtzum issue creates air pnimi. Lefi drush zeh, who creates air pnimi? Atzmos creates air pnimi. Why? This is the kavon. You're listening to that. You're listening. Listening to that. Yeah, it's that. Hey, you're listening to that. Okay. Look inside. Ul illness bayad. Page lamed ches. Second paragraph. 5th line. It's the parenthesis. We're in the Segraim. The whole Segraim. I just want to point out that this isn't the Shita of Eidus Pshutim. This isn't the Shita that the Tzimtzum Arishin creates the Kaf. The Tzimtzum Arishin creates the Kaf. What is the Taich Kav? Of course it means, however you explain the Iyif and Sfiris, but the Rikin is a Gili of Eir Bekeli, a Gili of Eir Bekeli. It's how the Atzmos Eir, there's no Shaykhas to Gili and Kelim. There's no Kabbalah. The Tzimtzum creates that. Okay, Mashenkin, according to us, it's an Ifam Pnimi B'yetz. So look inside. We had discussed before, and the Rebbe actually mentioned it at the end of the first paragraph on this page. The B'derech Klal in general. The primary reason for Tzimtzum Arishin B'derech Siluk is for the sake of Kelim. Because Lifnei HaTzimtzum, we don't even call the Kelim, we call the Kelim Oisius. And Lifnei HaTzimtzum, the Oisius are Magala the Eir. But the Magala the Eir are the kind of way that they have no Metzias besides for that. In other words, the Kelim are Magala Eir, but they don't make a Miyut on the Eir. They're just Magal there. The Eis are totally bought. And Tzimtzum Rishon is Siluk Lagamri. You take away the Ein Sof completely. You leave over the Mokan HaKelim, Eis HaShibu, by itself. And that act is called creating the Kelim. The event of Tzimtzum Rishon, of removing the Ein Sof and leaving over the Kelim, the Eis HaShibu is called creating the Kelim. Now you know and I know that the Kelim are not created by Tzimtzum Rishon. Kelim are created by Asmos. But the emergence of Kelim, the Gili of Kelim as a Metzias by itself is connected to Tzimtzum Rishon. And if a tiny drop of oil would be left over, the Kelim would remain buffled. Or to say it in more edel aces, the Kelim would continue to do what Kelim did before, which is to be Megala Eir. And they would Megala Eir in the kind of way that in no way are they master, they're just Megala. So they wouldn't have a Metzias by themselves. So that's why you'd have Siluk Lagamri, they didn't take it, they moved completely. And the Kelim now become a Metzias. And when the Eir is going to come back into the Kelim are going to be able to be Mailam Master, they'll be able to be Makabal the Eir, and Mailam Master on the Eir, they're going to become the Tatar Govar. Who's stronger, Eir or Kelim? The answer is lifting at Tzimtzum Eir is stronger, after the Tzimtzum Kelim is stronger. But in order for Kelim to do what Kelim need to do, there has to be Siluk Lagamri. This is what it says before the Achei Temimim. Now we actually agree with this. The Achei Temimim agrees with this. The Achei Temimim agrees that in order to create Kelim, you have to have Siluk Lagamri. In other words, the Mashmos, it's such a weird thing, the Mashmos of the Ayin Beis, that Tzimtzum Rishon could be Miyat Lagabe Kav, is only a Mashmos. It's only a Havamin. Lepayel, we agree that Tzimtzum Rishon has to be removed the air completely. Even though mitzad the kav it's able to be miyut, but mitzad the kelim it has to be siluk. He said in the first paragraph on this page. So we actually agree with this. We agree, both shittas agree that Tzimtzum Rishon has to be siluk lagamri, even lagabe the eir which has esesphiris in it, because otherwise the kelim wouldn't form. The mashmos is only that lagabe kav it's enough miyut and not siluk, not lagabe kelim. So the Rebbe says, remember we talked about it in Perek Ches, it's 10 parakim ago, we had time to forget it twice. Lay bishvil eir va'ayin mashakosem bedrush gimel minei adam, and they tzamach tzedek samayim gimel minei. Now, v'hainu, this means that the idea that Tzimtzum creates kelim, and the reason Tzimtzum creates kelim because the eir is nostalgic lagamri, is be'ikir lagabe kelim, not lagabe eir. Why not? Because lagabe eir, because the way it operates is that after the Tzimtzum it came back. I don't know if you remember those shiurim, but we wallowed in this. Remember, it's like a kocht in dem shtar. Eir is lower than kelim, especially according to the aspect of leinogabay Tzimtzum klal. The kelim were never taken away, so the kelim are lakus b'pshitas leinogabay Tzimtzum klal. Remember the end of the Maimir? Yeah, but one thing, Kelim are misyachas to Tzimtzum and Eir misyachas to lifnei Tzimtzum. Remember that? Kelim in so many ways are better than Eir, but Kelim exists because of the Tzimtzum itself. Eir exists because the Eir lifnei Tzimtzum comes after the Tzimtzum, and in this aspect, Kelim are his chachos, to use the Eisias Harav, and Eir is Gili Ahelim, is not his chachos. The kav is in so many ways less than the kelim, but the kav relates to the Ein Sof lifnei Tzimtzum. The kelim in so many ways is better than the kav, but the kav relates to the Tzimtzum itself. Remember what did he call it? What did he call it? Remember what he called it? What did he call it? What did he call it? Sheidish Hadin. Gedenkst? Sheidish Hadin. The mitzias of kelim are connected to the Tzimtzum itself. With all their milas, Sheidish Hadin. I gave you a hezbollah b'derech efshar what Sheidish Hadin means. I'm not going to go over it now. Okay? So far, Tzimtzum Rishon b'derech siluk is only because of kelim, and we agree, even our sheet agrees that for the sake of kelim, siluk l'gamri, kav is chazav v'heir. But you have to understand, even though kav is chazav v'heir, kav is chazav v'heir after Tzimtzum. First it's removed, and then it comes back. No, but then it comes back in the Shina HaMahus. Now in our Shita, in the Mashmos of our Shita, you don't got to say any of that. Because we hold the mitzad the kav could be left over, correct?
Yep.
Yeah? But according to the earlier Shita, the Eid is removed and it's coming back with Shin HaMahuz, but it's coming, and it's Misyachas to Livnei HaTzimtzum, which is why we call it Kiruv and Gili and Vekas and Beligavol, but it's changed very significantly. Let's read. Says the Rebbe, Avol Mikomok. Nevertheless, even though the Inyan of Tzimtzum Rishon is primarily about Kalim, because Kalim is Misyachas to Tzimtzum itself, and Eid is Misyachas Livnei HaTzimtzum because it's Chazav V'Heyed, you should know HaTzimtzum B'Bechinas is Almos Mamish. That the Tzimtzum Legabi Eid is also Siluk Legamri. The Eid in Seif is taken away completely, and after it's taken away completely, it's brought back. So on the one hand, when it's brought back and it's Misyachas to Livnei HaTzimtzum, so it's considered like Livnei HaTzimtzum. But because it's taken away completely, it comes back in a new Mahus, which we're going to be speaking about in 1 minute. And he says, V'zer al pishita the amshachas hakav me'ed ha'in seif mamish. This idea that the Ein Seif is taken away completely, not like the mashmos of our Maimed, that it's left over, it's just made less, or at least theoretically it could be left over. There's a mashmos that it can be left over, that it's made less. But you hold that the Eid has to be removed completely and kam b'shin hamahus. That's according to the Shita, which doesn't hold as a sfiris neir. Al kain, therefore, tzadach lemi, you have to say that the tzimtzum, what's the next two words? Amazing. Legabi akav. That the tzimtzum, not just legabi kalim, but also legabi akav is siluk, is almus, legamri, v'chulu, tzimtzum arishna, the kav goes away completely. Why? Because tzimtzum arishna is not only necessary to create kalim, tzimtzum arishna is necessary to create kav. What's the type kav? A kav means an oil that goes into a keli. Because lifnei tzimtzum, there's no such thing. Lifnei tzimtzum, oil has no shaychus to keli. Oil is always in a state of eagle. So according to this shita, tzimtzum arishna is taka true that in this aspect, in quotations, kav is better than rishima. Because although the rishima is left over and it's l'nagabay tzimtzum cloud, but the rishima is misachas to the tzimtzum itself, which is the kercha helam. And the kav is misachas to the tzimtzum lifnei tzimtzum. But between how it was before the tzimtzum and the way now it comes back after the tzimtzum, it becomes a whole new mitzias, because it has to be changed by the tzimtzum. And the only way for the Eid HaKav to be changed by the tzimtzum is siluk legamri, because the tzimtzum has to make the oil a new oil. It's not just to create kelim. You need it for a new oil. What's the new oil? Oil that's going to go into kelim. Let's read. And again, I want to throw it, and I have an Eidus over here. I got myself an Eidus, and I'm going to hold him accountable for everything I say, even if he's not sure in his Eidus, we're going to hold him. Okay, he's my Eidechad. Okay. That I showed him the shtick of the Bekir. And in the Maimed that I'm sitting on my table, Dover Negel Ed, Tzimtzum Arishan, the oil has to fight through Chaysh Tzimtzum. Chaysh Tzimtzum doesn't let it through, and has to go against Chaysh Tzimtzum to come Achei Temimim. Because of that fight, the oil comes in a new mahus, comes in even a Pnimi. But that whole necessity is beikir only in the sheet of Eidus Pshutim, that there's no Asasfiris Neir. Because according to the sheet there is Asasfiris Neir, the inyan of oil Pnimi, the inyan of oil going into Keli goes till Etzmas, Pnimi B'Etzim. So you don't need Tzimtzum Addition to create that kind of oil. The oil naturally exists. You know why it exists? The Eibush made it. Why did he make it? When in doubt, say kavod. So the Rebbe is speaking now according to the Shita, which is not the Shita of Ayin Beis. Keep going. The Akir is only Sham Shochas HaKav Hu, that after the Kav is removed completely, and it has to wrestle and fight and push to get through Chaysh Tzimtzum. And Tzimtzum is considered stronger than Eidin Seif. Tzimtzum takes away Eidin Seif. So there has to be something fancy, which is called Pnimius HaKav, which comes from Teferes HaNelam, which is Loina Gavaya Tzimtzum, that's stronger than the Tzimtzum itself. The Rebbe brings 3 madregas. Keil, Elikim, Havaya, Diva, Yikes, Kapitel Nun and Tilum. Keil is Chasad, Elikim is Gevur, and Havaya is Teferes. And he explains, Keil means Eidin Seif, Sufnei Tzimtzum. Elikim means Tzimtzum Addition. And Avaya means a Madrega Vein Sefer, which is so strong that the Tzimtzum Adisha never touches it. It's called Teferes HaNe'alam, Pnimius HaKav, Lei Noga by a Tzimtzum Klal, and that's how the Kav is Bekei Cheshach HaTzimtzum. You know how the Kav breaks through Cheshach HaTzimtzum and comes Achar HaTzimtzum in Eifin of Pnimius. Shinam Hus, because the Pnimius HaKav is stronger than Tzimtzum itself. Tzimtzum is stronger than Eidin Sefer. And Pnimius HaKav is stronger than Tzimtzum. And Pnimius HaKav fights and affects that Chitenius HaKav should come la'achar HaTzimtzum in Eifin of Shini Amos, in Eifin of Gilu. But if and when the Eidin Seif, the Kav, comes b'Shini Amos after the Tzimtzum, it's called Chozer V'Hei. Look inside. That bringing down of the Kav, even though it has to break through Cheshach HaTzimtzum, and that's what makes it into an Eid Pnimi, according to the other Maimorim that don't believe it as a Sfiris in Eid. When the Eid comes after the Tzimtzum, the Eid HaKav, which is so changed by Tzimtzum Adishan, relates not to the Tzimtzum itself, it relates to Lifnei HaTzimtzum. And since the Eid HaKav, the way it comes through Cheshach HaTzimtzum, even though it has to break the Cheshach HaTzimtzum, it comes. It's misyaches. It relates to the Eid in Seif Lifnei HaTzimtzum, which we call Sfira, Saint Kate, which we call the Machon of Seif of Kalalmin. Hine, whatever Hine means, Hagam dehefen amshachasi b'derech dilag HaTzimtzum. Although the Kav comes with it in a way of a quantum separation. Because before Tzimtzum Adishan, Eidin Seif is eagle, is like Seif of Kalalmin. And after Tzimtzum Adishan, the Eidin Seif is the Ma'amid Matzav of Kav, which is the Shinem Hus. It's called the Ha'ara the Ha'ara. I'll talk about it in a minute. So the Eid has been radically changed. Says the Rebbe, it doesn't matter how much the Eid changes, the Eid is still Dveikus. As much as the Eid has changed, it's still reflecting its source. Look inside. Make Ukmei Hamshachas Hashaitis Derech HaPefsek HaGulgelis Chuli, like hair which has to burst through the wall of the skull. Chassidus holds that hair has hollows inside, they're like straws. You know the place? You do. Yeah, and inside the hollows of each hair, there's the chayas. And the chayas in the hair comes from the brain. But because it has to break through the skull, it comes to so little chayas that when you cut the hair, it doesn't even hurt. Only when you yank on the hair, the way it's connected to the skull, does it hurt. If you cut it, it doesn't hurt.
That's because you're pulling your skin.
Fine. Because there's very, very little chayas in the hair. There is chayas in the hair, but they grow. And the chayas in here comes not from the skin, the way biologists understand it. It comes from the mayach. But because it has to break through Cheshach HaTzimtzum, it's b'shini hamahus. But on the other hand, it's shini hamahus ahin, shini hamahus ahead. When you see hair growing, you know there's a brain inside the head.
What about beard hair?
Okay, not now. The same is true in Seif. Comes through Cheshach HaTzimtzum, and it comes in Eifin of shini hamahus. Even though it comes in Eifin of shini hamahus, it's coming. It's dveikus in Seif shelifnei HaTzimtzum. Okay? Nevertheless, I think I'm 9 lines from the bottom of the page, and I give a W82. The Eid HaKav, which is so changed by the Tzimtzum Adishan itself, is touching, and dveikus, that's the magic word. What does dveikus mean? Anybody? Dveikus.
One.
Dveikus. She started crying. Dveikus, no? What says Dveikus? Dveikus means representative of. Dveikus is more than bittul. Bittul means first I'm separate and then I'm bottled. Dveikus means I have no metzias other than that I'm revealing my source. Eid HaKav comes with a shina and husman seif shlifnei HaTzimtzum, but it's Dveikus. Dveikus means that as much as the Kav is changing, it's representing not itself, but it's seif shlifnei HaTzimtzum. And therefore, in the aspect of its dveikus, it's like the source. And of course, when the Rebbe says of him, it doesn't mean that it's save of kalamin. It means that it creates yesh meyayin, even though it's hashini mahus. Lefi, because I'm reading on, when you talk about godliness, says the Rebbe, dveikus kazu, anything which is godliness, even if it has dveikus interruptus, you understand that the dveikus is interrupted by the tzimtzum adisha. Ki dveikus hashaydes aderach mashal, like the dveikus of hair which have to break through the skull and they come b'shinei mehus after the skull, and nevertheless they're revealing chayes which is in the brain. Says the Rebbe, maspik liyes ein mein amor. Even though it's going through the skull and it's changing in its mehus, it's still me'ein amor, which means it's still dveikas, and it's still reflecting its source. Since the original life is Ein Sefer Yetzim, so a ha'ara of the original lady in Seif is dveikas in Seif shlefnei ha'atzimtzum. I'm reading on page Lamed Ches. If I can count, I'm 7 lines from the bottom of the page, like it says in other places. Sheme'ein Seif, you're talking about godliness. Gam ha'ara baba derech diluk. When from Ein Seif you have an oir, which emerges in the original of Ein Seif in a way of diluk that it's quantum separated. He l'mayla be'ein erech. It's much higher. Me'am shocha. They say that ishtalshus when one thing goes from a higher level to a lower level. In Seder ishtalshus after the Tzimtzum, which is b'Seder v'adrog, it's orderly and it's gradual. I don't know what this means. I'm going to leave it alone. But Pashas, it means it lifts lachar Tzimtzum. Everything is ilav yolo, and ilav yolo is a lot closer than Eid Moed. Nevertheless, the dveikus of Eid after the Tzimtzum to the Eid lifnei Tzimtzum is stronger than this ilav yolo. And the reason for this is that since the trace that comes after the Tzimtzum is also ain't safe, so therefore it's vacant. Since even though the Eid comes through a leap, it comes to Shini Amhuz. Yesh gam k'tas dveikus has a little bit of dveikus. What's the next 5 words? The minute Eid stops being dveikus, Eid stops being Eid. That's the mashal, the Eir HaShemesh, which everybody struggled with, that the second the sun disappears, there's no sunlight. Even though in physics, when the sun disappears, you have 9 more minutes of sunlight. But according to Torah, the minute there's no sunlight, because it has to be dveikus. If the Eir HaKav is not dveikus, it's not Eir. So as much as the Eir has changed, it's still dveikus. U'bechinas Eir HaBeligable, the infinite light, that is the bechinas dveikus. It's in a state of dveikus, they say that a little bit of it is also ain't safe. And the Rebbe concludes, V'zehu, and this is the pshat, sha'akav, hagam shenikra mazel, although the kav is compared to mazel. Mazel means hair. Shezauk me'am shachas ha'shayres, which is like the idea of hair, which is be'ein arech to the brain itself. Mikol mokoim and again, but Davik is connected to the ain't safe. What's the next words? The kol zel ha'ashita sha'am shachosu ain't safe ha'beligu. Ha! What I just said, this entire segraim is according to the sheet of Ein Seif Believable. You hold the sheet of Ein Seif Believable, lift that since there's no such thing as Pnimi. Pnimi is created by Kav, by Tzitz B'Rishon, and it comes to Shini Amhus. But even after it comes to Shini Amhus, it's still Chosev V'Heid, it's still Dveikus, otherwise it wouldn't be Ein Seif. Does anybody want to comment? Does anybody want to comment? So let's talk a little bit. We had this conversation earlier in the year. We have 12 minutes. We'll talk, okay? I prepared this sheet. We're doing this for the next class. In the next class, we're going to read mamish a few shuras of Maimir, and we'll talk, obviously, and then we'll learn this from the Rebbe's Maimir. Hashav Bagam Tafshin Yud Gimel, which is tomorrow, B'li Neder Mitzvah. I remember being a 16-year-old. I'm sure I told this to you. And I had no one to talk to. I really didn't. But I was trying I tried a lot harder than I try now. I just was hitting my head against the wall. And I was trying to visualize in my mind why when a light comes from a source and bounces off a second source, it changes. Sunlight, it comes out of the sun, it hits a mirror, and it goes away from the mirror to a second mirror, to a third mirror, to a fourth mirror, Is that a ha'ara and ha'ara da ha'ara and ha'ara da ha'ara da ha'ara and ha'ara da ha'ara da ha'ara da ha'ara? Yes or no? No. But when I was 15, I had nobody to ask that question to who would give me a straight answer. I'd get ooh, ah, e, I, o, everything but I don't know. I was living in California. There wasn't that. I was so afraid of Rabbi Yossi. Forget about it. So what is Taisha ha'ara da ha'ara? We talked about this. So first of all, the ha'ara has a number of names. Ha'ara, the ha'ara is also called the ha'ara nivdalas. Ha'ara the ha'ara is also called oyer shel tuldo. All these expressions mean the same thing. And the classic mashal for ha'ara the ha'ara is hair, Chassidus. The mashal that I gave you earlier in the year is the colors of a rainbow. The sun produces light. Now you have to understand, the sun that we see is not the sun Chassidus is talking about. They talk about Shemesh. We don't even talk about Chama. We talk about Cheres. There's three suns. There's Shemesh, there's Cheres, and there's Chama, and there's Cheres. We talk about Cheres. My mother was talking about Shemesh. It's nicht Punkt derselbe Sonne. It's the same sun. It's a whole different Bechina Madrege. I explained this to you when I gave you that shiur. The light of the sun reflects the sun. Everything the sun has, the light has. So hypothetically, theoretically, the sun has infinite number of colors. To say it in the language of physics, has an infinite number of wavelengths. Now, of course, you know that that's impossible, because physically there's no such thing as infinity. But we use the word to explain it to us in machshavas ha'iyun, in theoretical thought. The sun is a source of light. From the sun there's light. Light has different colors in it. And what makes a color one color or another is how long the wavelength is. If it's a bluer wavelength, it's shorter and more energetic. And if it's a longer wavelength, it's longer and it's less energetic, right? So the longest wavelengths are red, and there's a wavelength which is so long that our eye cannot see it, which is called infrared. They use that to see at night in the war and so on. Then you have blue, which is the very short wavelengths that are very, very energetic. And then you have called ultraviolet. Ultraviolet means a deep blue. You know how deep the blue is? The human eye can't see it. But there are animals that can see the colors that we can't see. So they can see at night, whether they're seeing infrared, which is very long wavelengths, or they think ultraviolet, which is very short wavelengths. That's a whole spiel. Okay? The shortest wavelengths that have the most energy are called gamma rays. Gamma rays, they're extremely small and very, very energetic. So, how many colors could be in sunlight? At least in machshavas ha'iyun, there's an infinite number of colors. When you look at the sun, you see only one. When the sun's light is blocked completely, it's dark. When the sun's light is blocked partially, which is called infraction, diffraction, whatever the right word is, so it splits into all the colors of the wavelength. Like you see the crystals on a chandelier. Or when it's a cloudy day and you see a rainbow. And when you see a rainbow, you'll always see the colors in the same order. The blues will be on one end, the red will be on the other end, and you're going to change from blue to green to yellow to orange to red. They always follow the same pattern. You know, the Abish doesn't use his crayons in a different order. You understand? They're always in the same order. Because the order that you're seeing it has to do with energy, from weaker to stronger, or from stronger to weaker. There will go how it goes, yeah? So how many colors do you see in the rainbow? 4, 5, 6, 3 primary colors. I don't know how many. But in Higoyin, there's Bligvul. So the white has Bligvul potential colors, right? If I can use a bad word, I hope you don't mind. The white light has Sfiris Ein case, but you see only one white, right? Like it says in our mind. When it splits, the whole white light is represented in the rainbow, but now it's divided up into many colors. So those colors, those Sfiris, what you want to call them, Sfiris Ein case, you want to call them Sfiris Agenuzes, you want to call them whatever you want, are the same thing as the white light. The only thing is, they don't look like the white light, they change their tziyah, they change their mahus. That is the meaning of ha'ara da ha'ara. Light that comes from the source that stops looking like the source. But the Rebbe says, if it's light, it's dvikus. And if it's not dvikus, it's not light. Period, full stop, the end of story. In other words, in Chassidus, we don't believe at all. I apologize. We don't believe at all that when the sun sets, you still have sunlight for 9 minutes. It's a physical fact. When the sun goes down, there's sunlight for 9 minutes. In fact, you don't see sunlight, you see the sun. Why? Because when you look up and see the sun, you're not seeing the sun. You're seeing the light of the sun, which has left the sun and started traveling to you. But it left the sun looking like a sun, and when it hits your retina, hits your eye, it looks like a picture of the sun. It takes 9 minutes, if it's traveling 186,000 miles a second, to reach us. Because the sun is 93 million miles away. Whatever, 8 minutes, whatever the number is. So the light leaves the sun, then the sun goes beyond the horizon. For the next 9 minutes, you still see the sun. Why? Because you're not seeing the sun, you're seeing the sun's light. That's how it is in physics. How is it in Teda? The second there's no sun, there's no sunlight.
There is light.
Huh?
There is light.
Physically there's light. But that's the light of Cheres. It's not the light of Chama, it's not the light of Shemesh. The Shemesh or Morgan of Ayelikim, the same ball, it's 3 madregas. The highest madrega Shemesh is a mashal for the Eibishter. The second madrega of Chama is the mashal for this that the Evdei Aveda Zara made into Matthias B'fnei Atzmei. Cheres means the physical glob of helium. That's what it means. Hydrogen, the ball of gas. It's physical. And when Chassidus talks about the Shemesh, it's not talking about what you see physically, it's talking about the pnimius of the Shemesh. And the pnimius of Shemesh is a mo'ir, of which there is oir, and if there's no mo'ir, there's no oir. Why? Please, someone tell me the right word. Huh? Because of dveikus. The oir's entire identity is that it's reflecting the source. The source vanishes, there's no reflection. It's not a physical thing, it's not a particle, it's not a photon. The light doesn't have a dual form like every physicist understands, right? This is the relativity theory. That light is a wave and it's a particle, it's a piece. So the sun goes away, you don't need the sun to have the pieces, it's a piece of sun. But in the when you talk about Eir, which is Ha'ara, there's no piece, it's just a reflection. The minute there's no more, there's no Eir, because the whole Matthias is Dveikus. So the Rebbe Rashab says, when the Eir changes from plain light to colored light, and it becomes a whole new light. Now appreciate again, it's becoming a whole new light, has 2 parts. Part number 1 is that now it's Sfiris, and before it wasn't Sfiris. And part number 2, V'hu ha'ikir, someone finish the sentence. Dum 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 dum. How does that song go? Anybody? Part number 2, what's part number 2? Huh? And the oil is going to go into a keli, it's an oil pnimi. Before the tzimtzum from that oil was eagle. Yes or no?
Yep, sure.
So the reason the oil has changed in these 2 very radical ways, that before it was plain, and now it has gavnim, now it has colors. Before it was an eagle, that's the shaykhs the kalim, and now it's going to go into a kalim. There is slapshus. Both of those things are blamed on the tzimtzum edition itself. The tzimtzum edition, what's the lashon? Dava negdel oir makes the sheet in the these 2 ways. It's no longer white, it's colored, and it's no longer a makif, it's a pnimi. It goes into a keli. Says the Rebbe, in spite of all of those changes, that oil is not mesachas to the tzimtzum. What changed it? It's mesachas to the source of the oil before the tzimtzum, which is called dveikus, nikeres. As opposed to kelim, which the dveikus built in nikeres. Remember that? Because nizgala sheidish adin. In other words, the Shima with all of its mile is a mesachas to the tzimtzum itself. And the kav with all of its chesed is a mesachas to lifting the tzimtzum. But appreciate that everything I just told you is not the sheet of this maimed. It's the sheet of the earlier maimed. And the Rebbe Rashab just spent a half a page explaining that sheet. What are the next words? Anybody? Last line of the page. Ulefi hamavur kan. Based on our shita. And for this, you're going to have to come back tomorrow. Okay? It's elementary. And I'm being very repetitive. But I'm learning the mimer with you. It's all I'm doing. I'm learning the mimer with you.